Now, here's a really weird story from The Verge about someone from the Conan Doyle estate suing Netflix for their depiction of Sherlock Holmes in their upcoming story about Enola, which is apparently the Holmes sister or Sherlock Holmes' sister. I'm not sure exactly the story, but it's not about Enola. It's about Sherlock themselves, which is strange. So the idea is that the public domain character, and we all know Sherlock is public domain. Anyone can write a story about Sherlock. But now they're saying the depiction of Sherlock in Enola Holmes has too many emotions and respects women. And that violates Doyle's copyright. Now, exactly what copyright? Because we thought that was public. It was anyone can write a story about anything regarding Sherlock, but apparently not. So there's a series of court rulings from the 2010s, and there are details from 10 stories, which are still owned by the Doyle estate. So they own these 10 other stories. Now, there have been about 50 or 60 or so stories written on Sherlock by Arthur Conan Doyle. I don't know what 10 stories they're referring to, whether those were released or not released or whatever. I have no idea. So the state argues that Springer's books, the guy who wrote the Enola Holmes stories, and thus by extension Netflix's adaptation, draw key elements from those 10 stories. So it's not only suing Netflix, but Springer and her publishing Penguin Random House and the production company for unspecified financial damages. Now this is very strange. How the heck are you being financially damaged from a public domain character that anyone has any right to write whatever they like, but apparently because it's a Netflix special or series, which is going to be popular and thus making money, that they're not receiving any money because they still own some copyright from 10 other stories based off which depict Holmes as a certain personality. Like you can't pet a dog or something, and it's you're being too emotional. You can't have Holmes do that. There could be a case for that if they own the copyright, but it's a very gray area because now you have the copyright for Holmes, but not the copyright for Holmes's supposed personality. So you're free to write Holmes just in a certain way, which is very strange because obviously you use Sherlock Holmes to write adventures, to write murder mysteries, to write some kind of capers where he's the detective, because that's the point. But you can only depict him in a certain way. I can understand that. I don't understand the legal copyright behind it. So we're in a very gray new area for me, and I don't know how this works. So they previously made another lawsuit against Miramax for the movie Mr. Holmes because it claimed it included plot details about his retirement, which only happens in the final story. So that's interesting. Maybe they have copyright of the final 10 stories. Okay. It's like your characters can express emotion in your stories. I'm sure Holmes expressed all kinds of emotions throughout his books. They weren't very robust emotions, but he has a love for playing the violin. He has a love for narcotics. He loves puzzles, of course. He likes acting. He likes boxing. He likes all sorts of things. But how emotional you get is questionable, of course. So apparently there's a legal document about him liking dogs, and is described as a potentially protected trait that you can show Holmes liking dogs. I'm like, what? Only in the late stories, for example, do we learn that Holmes' attitude toward dogs has changed. He has grown to like them. And that Watson has been married twice. And if you keep going through the document, they make reference to the Rolls-Royce hot dog stand. Whatever that has to do with dogs, I don't know. These are very strange, very specific arguments to be made in court. They fought a partial public domain ruling by unsuccessfully arguing that Sherlock Holmes slowly became a complex figure who needed full copyright protection to remain coherent. They claim that losing copyright to some of the stories gave Holmes multiple personalities. Oh dear. Okay. So I'm not going to talk about multiple personalities anymore. But when you give your copyright to the public domain, or it's been expired, you can write Holmes as whatever you want. That's the idea. That's the general idea of freedom of having public domain. I can take that. You can take that. You can say, okay, now Holmes is a psych ward person. He has multiple personalities. He's running up the walls. He's in a rubber room. He's bouncing off the walls. He's going crazy. You could do that. You could tell a story like that. I don't know if it's going to be successful, but apparently if it's even remotely successful and the estate doesn't like that, they can sue you for financial damages because you gave Mr. Holmes a different personality or multiple personalities he wasn't supposed to have. They also suggest that the copyright specifically covers Holmes caring if Watson is injured or kidnapped, which may come as a surprise to the character's massive fan fiction. Yeah, so if Holmes and his partner get hurt, like Watson gets hurt, you have to be very careful of his emotional reaction to his sidekick and how he has to get him back. This is getting ridiculous. So I don't know what part of the law. I think this is just someone who owns the estate and is trying to garner control of it again for whatever reason, even though its copyright has been expired, by having some legal statute over some of the copyright it has over 10 random stories we don't know. I found this very entertaining to read the idea that something is public domain, and if you can be popular with it, like I can suddenly make a 10-part series of a show or a book series or a comic book or what have you, and Holmes is not quite, he's a little emotional. He's got some feelings, a little humanity in him. Thus, the depiction of Holmes is wrong in the eyes of the estate. You can be sued for it and potentially go to court, which I think isn't going to happen. I think they should have every right. What's her name? Springer, for writing Enola Holmes, has every right to do so, to be that adapted to the screen. They have every right to do that as well. This is public domain. This goes in the way of copyright. All the laws we have that allow creative types, writers, artists, what have you, to depict famous characters from 100 or so years ago. They should be free to do so and not go through all this nonsense about what is the real depiction of Sherlock Holmes. By very nature of fan fiction or writing, you are allowed to write whatever you choose. Thanks for listening, folks. Have yourself a good day.